Hello and welcome to Real Watchers Movie Club. I'm Garrett.
And I'm Kevin.
And this is the show where we pick a movie every week and discuss it like a book club. On today's show, we're covering the legendary Western Once Upon a Time in the West. Our thoughts and more coming up on Movie Club. Released in 1968, Once Upon a Time in the West was directed by Sergio Leone and stars Claudia Cardinale, Charles Bronson, and Henry Fonda. A mysterious stranger with a harmonica joins forces with a notorious desperado to protect a beautiful widow from a ruthless assassin working for the railroad. It is currently ranked 51 on IMDb's Top 250 and currently has a 4.4 out of 5 on Letterboxd and is ranked number 58 on its Top 250. Before we dive into the show, we wanted to give a quick spoiler warning. We will be discussing plot points, twists, revelations, all that kind of wonderful stuff on the show. So if you haven't seen the film yet, we'd recommend watching it and then coming back. Stay tuned to the end of the show to figure out what show we're watching, or what movie, rather, we'll be watching next week. Alrighty, and if you haven't quite figured out yet, even Kevin and I have kind of started doing this. We've taken turns every week in selecting a movie, and this was my turn this week. Since it was my turn, I'll ask you first, Kevin, before we dive in, quick spoiler-free thoughts. Before spoiler-free thoughts, had you heard anything about this movie before? Had you known anything about it? Was it a complete out-of-left-field pick?
It was definitely an out-of-left-field pick from you, but it's okay. That's what this series is for, is out-of-left-field movies that I have never heard of, which is funny because... Isn't this a really big Western movie? And I had no clue that this was even a movie.
It's one of the bigger ones if you're like a cinephile. It's not quite like Unforgiven or Tombstone or like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly kind of levels of everyone knows. It's definitely one that like less people know about than like those other big ones.
Yeah, because I have never heard of this one except when I was scrolling through IMDb's 250. So, I mean, I'm glad we watched it, and I'll talk about it more when we get into it. It was an adventure.
I had definitely heard about this movie before we had watched it. I'd seen it mentioned several times on different videos online, and had always wanted to watch it. This was kind of one of the Westerns that was at the top of my list to make sure that I watched by the end of this year. And I'm happy I did. We'll talk about it a little bit more as we dive in. But this movie has certainly a couple of ups and downs. Alrighty, Kevin. So it sounds like this movie was just as much of an adventure as for you as it was for the characters, as you kind of mentioned a little bit ago. So what do you mean when you said it was an adventure for you?
It was a little bit too drawn out for me. Like, I'm not saying like I don't mind long movies or anything like that, but there was some scenes where there's a lot of dead space, things not going on, things not being said, story not being told in those scenes. I get it, the premise of the scenography, or like how it's shot, cinematography is supposed to show you how beautiful the landscape is and everything like that. I think it drew a little bit too long into that in some of the scenes, and I didn't feel like it was moving the story forward until somebody had to say something.
Sure, I can definitely see where that is coming from, and I do agree. I think there is enough dead zone in this movie that you could probably cut this down to 2 hours and 20 minutes, which you'd shave off like a quick 20 minutes. I mean, it's still going to be a long movie, and I feel like you'd get your point across artistically and thematically, but you just wouldn't be almost 3 hours long, which, again, I mean, I love a long movie. The longer the better in a lot of cases, unless you don't have really a story to tell. But I think that's kind of my biggest flaw with this movie, is that like there is a little too much brooding, right? Like a lot of Western is in like the look, right? The stare, the kind of the stare downs are just as much like they build tension before a gun battle or like before a duel or something. And here it's just they're a little too much. And I feel like we were already shown like the character of Harmonica, I guess, is really the only way the character is named. I want to go ahead and double check that real quick. He's like, that's really all he does is just doing a lot of staring. Yeah, his character's name is just Harmonica. like it's a lot of staring and not a lot of talking, and I get what they're trying to tell with the story of that and like who he is, especially by the end of the movie when you find out who he really is and his relation to the assassin, who is Frank. I forgot the name. But in that moment's really cool. But like it's just a lot of him just being like,
yeah, or playing the harmonica in the corner of the bar or something like that.
We'll get to the music in a moment, but like it is just a lot of like the best way I can describe this is I just recently watched the original 1931 Dracula, and that is a very much kind of similar to me in a specific way, where both movies are just an unadulterated mood. Like this movie establishes a mood, and it is just. It's fantastic at it. A little drawn out, but it's definitely like a mood piece. Like you throw this on in the background if you're a Western fanatic. You know, like I don't know if Western people have a Halloween type holiday, but this is something you'd throw on in the background.
Yeah, or like you're cooking dinner or doing chores or something, and you want to just have something on in the background. This would be great because you'll understand the premise of the movie without really watching it, but they explain a lot of it during the dialogue phase of it, and you can look over and be like, oh, that's a cool shot, and then just keep doing what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's both a strength and a flaw with the film, right? Like at its core, once upon a time, like when you look at films like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, A Fistful of Dollars, all these movies that Sergio Leone was known for, this kind of feels much more like this is the movie that he wanted to make. That this is kind of like he's taking his time with it. Like this is supposed to be his epic. And again, for better or for worse, that's what happens.
Is this his first Western that he did?
He was known for them at this point.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like Sergio Leone is like to Westerns what Akira Kurosawa is to samurai films, or to what Steven Spielberg is for American blockbusters. Like he is the name. Like he, you know, like Clint Eastwood got his start in Sergio Leone's movies as a Western star. So like he was known for it. And I believe I read that he had retired before doing this and then ended up making this film. So, but I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me. I don't want to look for the fact right now. But but one thing I do really want to talk about, and we kind of mentioned it a little bit before, is the music for this movie. Ennio Morricone he's just one of the best film composers of all time. But this movie it's just theme song after theme song after theme song, and it is. I was hearing harmonica's theme for like a good 2 days afterward.
Yeah.
Something would happen in the house, and I'd be like, someone's behind me, and then I'd hear the harmonica in my head. But like everyone's music, this entire film is just top to bottom perfect music.
Yeah, I liked how unique it was from each person to each person. And then I love the harmonica in it. It's never really used anymore in film, but it has such a distinct sound to it that as soon as it pops up on the movie, it's like, oh, okay, this is where this is going.
Something's going down.
Yeah, exactly.
Like where is he? Like,
and I love how crisp it was too. Like I was watching it with headphones on, and when that harmonica came on, it was like an eargasm pretty much, and it was awesome.
All the music and even the sound design, because a lot of the sound in this movie is used as background music, as ambiance, right? So like kind of similar to the music, the intro to this movie, the first 8 minutes or whatever, with the gunslingers showing up at the train station, and then harmonica showing up, and then the gun battle is perfect.
Yeah, and I liked how it started off like that too. It didn't just start off as how, spoiler alert, how they assassinated the family. It started off with him coming into the picture, and then it gets back to the family pretty much and what happened. And that scene is cool too because he gets shot in it. Yeah, I thought he was going to be like this, like invincible cowboy, pretty much, because that's what I thought Westerns were and stuff. But he gets shot. I'm like, oh, that's a change of pace. I like it. Yeah, ain't nobody invincible in this movie, and that's what's fantastic. Speaking of, I mean, well, actually, I'll continue on the same subject. That intro sequence is so incredible because, like, the sound of the
what's the word I'm thinking of? Like the tower fan thing, the windmill. Excuse me, tower fan. Uh, the windmill, like that squeaking noise, and then like the water dripping onto the guy's hat. Like it's not music, but it is, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
it's all leading up. That tension is building until the train starts moving. They're walking away, and you hear the harmonica, and it is, oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it is very good. And then he doesn't have the same harmonica throughout the whole movie, right? Because when he first gets dropped off, he has a tiny harmonica. I feel like when he's in the bar,
It's the same one.
it is okay.
Or maybe
it
they
just looks
just
smaller
lost the
to
prop
me.
or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
But also, it's kind of funny that like his movement with the harmonica doesn't line up with what's being played.
No,
But
it's no.
But also, like the dialogue doesn't always match up either, and that's because it's spaghetti western. So some characters or some actors were Italian and some were American. So like some had to mouth out English words and some didn't. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of one of those. It's one of those like things you just learn to love about spaghetti westerns because it's just like they do what they can.
Oh, yeah.
But moving on from the music, I mean, even the scene after that with the family is also great, establishing Frank as a pretty great villain.
Oh, yeah.
And the lengths that he'll go to, you know, to kind of get what's his. It's just fantastic. And I'm not saying that family murder is fantastic, but the scene is fantastic. I think what really happens is this movie really suffers from second act fatigue. It's like once everyone has been, I would say the first 40 minutes are really smooth.
Good.
The last hour is really smooth. It's kind of that middle section where it really slows down a little bit.
Yeah, it's like the bar scene, and then until it gets up to like the final finale and stuff like that.
I mean, even the bar scene is great because there we're introduced to Cheyenne, who is a fantastic character. I love Cheyenne. He's one of those this movie is full of like taking your expectation and twisting it, right? So obviously you're like, okay, Charles Bronson playing harmonica, he's the hero, he's going to be invincible. No, he's shot in the first 8 minutes. Okay, we got this guy Cheyenne. He's wearing handcuffs. He's escaped from the law. He's probably a bad guy. I mean, yeah, he's an outlaw, but he's a good outlaw.
Yeah.
By the end of the movie, you got Claudia, who plays, I forget her name. Jill.
Her last name starts with an M.
McBain, yeah,
McBain,
which is the most Western movie sounding name I've ever heard. She is like, you know, she's coming as a city slicker, right, and then comes in and ends up staying and opening up the town and everything. So that changes your expectation. But let's talk about Frank a little bit because I can't stop talking about Frank because Frank's awesome. So at the time, Henry Fonda, who plays Frank, was well known for playing the good guy, the every guy, the person that you want to be, the person you want to be friends with. So when he was offered this role, he turned it down initially because he didn't want to be seen as this kind of a bad guy actor. But you know, all it took was for Sergio Leone to fly to the U.S. and met with Henry Fonda. And when Henry Fonda asked why he wanted him, Leone said, and I'm reading this specifically, Leone said, "Picture this. The camera shows a gunman from the waist down, pulling his gun and shooting a running child. The camera pans up to the gunman's face, and it's Henry Fonda. And until then, he'd only been cast as the good guy. He wanted the audience to be shocked." And it was great because, I mean, come on, Henry Fonda was great in this movie. A little rapey in that one part with Jill, but I mean, he's the villain, so
exactly
that fits. But so what do you think of the characters in this movie? You know, I feel like you've been kind of agreeing the whole time. Like, what do you think?
I like the character aspects in this whole movie. Very different tones and characters, and you can with some movies, like newer movies now, you can't depict who is like the main character, the main villain, the side people. In this movie, you can literally look at it in like that first 40 minutes and be like, okay, bad guy, good guy, girl comes in from city. It's they all have a specific part in this movie, and it never gets lost in it as well. No one flip flops or anything like that. And I liked the how you said about the outlaw in chains, because I was like, oh man, that's going to be another bad guy that Harmonica has to take care of. No, he takes care of Harmonica pretty much, which he helps him out and stuff like that. So that was a cool little, not twist, but it was a cool decision.
It's interesting you kind of mentioned that they kind of fit into their roles quite well, because I feel like for the longest time I couldn't tell who Harmonica was going to be. I mean, I know he's a top billed actor, so he's probably going to be the good guy, but he definitely does some things, and does some actions that would speak otherwise potentially. Mm-hmm. But then obviously ends up taking the proper path. So it's interesting that it was a little bit more kind of concrete for you. There's a period of time where I wasn't too sure.
Well, like it's like he went off the path and then he found his way back onto it. So I kind of directed it like, oh, he's the good guy, but he has to make mistakes to be the good guy.
Sure, or do villainous type things.
Yeah,
to be the good guy, I guess.
Exactly.
That's what I was saying. But speaking of really good things, I want to talk about, you kind of mentioned it earlier, the cinematography of this movie. This movie is shot gorgeously for the 60s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And what really helps with that also is, it's making you feel like you're there.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the set design and like the costumes, like everything feels tangible. It feels more realistic than a lot of Hollywood Westerns of its time, because they were kind of like, oh, hey, we gotta, you got the clothing from the clothing department and get you on set. We'll shoot this thing in a day. Whereas this, like, I feel like this took a while to do. Everyone's dirty. Everyone is, been through the tumble dry high on their dryer. Mm-hmm. But again, cinematography wise, like, again, there are dead spots of this movie, but it's never the camera. The camera is always doing something interesting, even if it's just, Harmonica glaring at Frank or something. Like, the way that the camera is framing everything and keeping everything in frame it's incredible. It's remarkable.
Oh yeah, even at the first part of the movie where they're at the waiting for Harmonica, the zoom ins on the faces and the twitchy eyes and stuff like that, and even the landscape when they have like zoom outs of the town or of where they're populated with the mountains in the background. It's a beautiful movie, and it's just a beautiful movie.
Yeah, it's really all there is to say about it. It's like, it's one of those things, like, would you say that, like, obviously, I can't quite tell. I mean, it sounds like you liked the movie, but it just kind of was a little too long and drawn out. But, like, is it one of those things where, like, you can see the artistry of what they're doing, even though it may not necessarily be resonating 100%?
Yeah, it's like, you get a cup of tea, but there's just one less sugar in it than you like, pretty much.
Sure. Okay.
Like I enjoyed the cinematography in it. I enjoyed the stunts in this movie too. People getting dragged off horses. Bro, they must have had so many bruises on that. And that's why I kind of gave it the score that it gave it, because I was looking at the stunt devils and stuff like that getting just absolutely whacked. And oh man, I was like,
and if it's being filmed in Italy, they're not getting paid nearly enough.
Exactly. Like, do you remember the guy on top of the church, or where he's scoping down through the slit? The way he falls off of that house, I'm like, okay, that's a broken neck. Like, he seriously could have hurt himself. But I was like, that's so cool, because you can't do that stuff nowadays. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
We clearly got to watch more Westerns, because stunts are like always something.
Oh, it was
every gun battle in a town has something like that, where people are falling off buildings and clearly getting hurt, but you don't see them getting hurt because they're not going to put that in the movie.
And I like the gun, the gunshot wounds and stuff like that too. When they get hit, they like slowly go down, because in real life, you get shot, it takes your brain a little bit to just be like, oh shit, I got shot. So it's like, okay, now I'm going down, which I really liked on that part as well. How realistic it feels like when they do those, I don't know, shoot shots, whatever they're called.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, it definitely feels more grounded, right?
Hmm.
It feels much more. This entire film feels much more grounded than a lot of other westerns. Even things like, one of the biggest ones that I always hear about is Tombstone. Is probably one you've heard of before as well. And that one's definitely more Hollywoodized as well. And it kind of leans into another point of what this movie is, right? This film is about the West as the West is coming to its end. Kind of similar to like Red Dead Redemption 2 and
Hmm.
that entire series, actually, you know, where you're seeing the West at its natural decline because this film came out as the West was dying in Hollywood. Like
Hmm.
Westerns weren't as popular anymore.
Hmm.
So it was really kind of a critique of Westerns while also being a celebration of them, which I think is
Hmm.
a really wonderful kind of combination that the film makes. Alrighty, Kevin. So I'm really interested to see what you have to think about this movie as far as a score goes and kind of like some final thoughts. So why don't you lay it on me?
Final thoughts is, if you haven't seen a Western movie, I wouldn't maybe you wouldn't recommend this as your first Western. Try to go for maybe a more Hollywood Western movie. But it was still, if you want cinematography, if you want great landscapes, great costumes, and really taking in that Western theme, definitely watch this one. There are some, as we talked about, long drawn out shots and stuff like that, but once you get past that, the movie is it's fantastic. I give it 3 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd, but I gave it, I think, out of 100, I probably give it like a 73. um
Okay.
just because, I mean, again, this is my first Western. It might pop up, score might pop up a little bit more once we start watching more and seeing how good this Western is, or how bad the other Westerns are.
No, yeah, I totally get it. And I think making this your first Western was really jumping off the deep end, right? Like or jumping into the deep end, right? Because it's much more long, it's drawn out. It's not so much simple. This doesn't have the same narrative formula as
Hmm.
every other Western has. So it's definitely like a different kind of film. But I'm glad you hung with it because
Yeah.
it is fantastic. But as far as my review, I did give it 4 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd, which equates to an 89. This is the score I gave it. Basically, it's a Western epic with an incredible cinematography and a beautiful score. Like it just creates music through sound, which is fantastic. Could use a little bit of trimling. I think it stumbles a little bit in its pacing, especially in its second act. But it's like I don't know if I would change it. Like, I mean, we're way too long after the movie came out anyway.
Hmm.
But like I don't know if I would change it. I like it as it is, even with its flaws. So with that, I'm going to give it an 89, which equates to, again, a 4 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd. So the question now falls to you. What do you think of Once Upon a Time in the West, if you actually checked it out? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and, in the comment section down below. We'll be watching, so make sure you're nice to each other down there. Next week, we'll be covering the animated sci-fi film WALL-E. So make sure you watch the film to be prepared before we talk about it. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to us here on YouTube. We just hit 100 subscribers at the time of this video. Well, actually, before this video comes out, but the day it comes out, we'll still be at 100 subscribers. So make sure you check our next live stream, which will be Tuesday. That will be November 7th for our 100th subscriber hot dog eating contest between Adrian and I. It's going to be fantastic. But thank you so much for watching. And until next time, make sure to keep your eyes on the screen.